Good afternoon, and welcome to this presentation on artificial intelligence, or better known as AI, in our schools. This is a mini PD session that has been recorded from April of 2024, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go through and record my presentation notes, essentially, because there is just a little bit too much back and forth. And then I'm going to make a separate video that is going to be demonstrating some of the tools and modeling some things like that. There's just a lot of clicking going on, and so it'd be a little bit more seamless this way, and I think that we'll get just a little bit more out of it. So just a few things about me. If we haven't ever had the opportunity to meet, my name is Katie Maddox. I am the instructional technology coordinator for Chilton County Schools. I was a classroom teacher for about 9 years at a school here in our school system, and I've been in my current position for a little over a year and a half now. And so my main role is to help teachers and administrators be able to seamlessly and effectively integrate technology into their buildings. So today we're going to be talking all about AI and tools that can help enhance teacher workflow, student instruction, and making sure that we're using it in the correct way. And so my personal favorite AI tool is something called Scribe. I make tons of step-by-step directions for our district whenever I'm sending out some instructions on how to use a new product or how to log in or how to create something. And so Scribe saves me so much time, and I hate that I have not had it sooner. So let's go ahead and get into, these are going to be some discussion points that we're going to go over today. Again, I'm going to make a separate video to go over some of those tools just because there is so much clicking, and it'd just be a little bit easier for everybody to follow. So I want to begin this presentation by opening up and you thinking about the way that you use AI every day already. All of us have smartphones. A lot of us probably use a facial recognition software to unlock our smartphones. And, that's just one example of ways that, AI has made our lives easier. And so while several people are resistant to this being an education, it is something that is in our world. And so I would rather us be a little bit more proactive, get an idea of what it is, how we can use it effectively, and make sure that we're modeling that for our students, incorporating it into our practices, both personally and professionally, to make everything a little bit easier on us. So again, these are some examples. Facial recognition I mentioned, predictive text. Whenever you're texting, or now in Google, you're writing an email or drafting something in Docs, it kind of starts to predict your text a little bit. This is a setting that can be turned off, but sometimes it's really helpful whenever words are just hard, because we all have those days sometimes. Google Maps uses artificial intelligence. My favorite was over spring break. I would get in my car, and it would think that I needed to drive to the Chilton County Board of Education because that's typically where I go every day. And so Google Maps uses artificial intelligence. I also love that feature whenever we're in a city or place that we're not as familiar, that I pull up my map and I say, hey, show me the fast food restaurants. Give me some suggestions for our meals. Those are great tools that I frequently use. Song and TV show recommendations when you're listening to your Spotify or Pandora, or you're watching Netflix, how it uses your algorithm of things that you've been watching and it gives you suggestions. Digital assistants, hey Alexa, hey Google, hey Siri, all of those things are, I purposely meant to not do that so my watch wouldn't do that, but all of those things are using artificial intelligence as well. So if we have embraced some of those things, then we do need to think about the products that are available to make our students' lives easier, our professional teaching lives easier, and help those in the classroom. I'm not going to play this video, but it is a great production by Google that shows lots of examples of artificial intelligence. So
Every day, AI helps people.
So a lot of information from this presentation comes from a book from Matt Miller, the AI educator. I had the opportunity to listen to him speak last summer. And so I really like this cycle that talks about how whenever something new comes out, everybody panics, and then everybody wants to try it, and then everybody says it's too hard, and then things kind of start to even out. So if I had to kind of think about AI in education, I feel like everybody is really between, I think, a 3 and a 4 at this point. If I had done this presentation a year ago, we would have been probably past a 2 towards a 3, or even just at a 2, just because at this point a lot of people have found a couple of things that they do like, and we're going to kind of start to see that even out a little bit. one of the purposes of me doing this is to help you learn about a few tools that I have vetted. I know that they're safe to use. We have, allowed usage of those in our district. And I hope that you will hopefully take this information today and try out some of those, especially with some of this downtime we'll have towards the end of the school year. So just a little review of the history of artificial intelligence. According to Matt Miller, this is the ability of a computer or machine to do things that normally required human intelligence. And there are actually three types. There's rule-based AI, where you have to provide a set of information. For example, in your navigation system for Google Maps, I have to put in an address for it to give me directions. It can't read my mind and tell me where to go. It can make suggestions based on what I have previously done, but in order for it to me to give step-by-step, or me to receive step-by-step directions, I have to give it an address. There's also strong AI, which is kind of a mix between the two. And then most of the things that we're looking at today are generative AI, where I can kind of give it a little bit of information and it's going to generate something entirely new. So that generative AI is the one that most people are labeling scary, or, too open, or things like that. So generative is what we're basically focusing on when we're talking about AI tools in the world of education. So both of these things are fun ways to introduce AI with staff, students, things like that. And I would highly encourage you, if you're listening to this presentation, to stop and pause a moment and go through with some of these. So Quick Draw is a product where you are given a prompt and you're supposed to draw the item, and Google is going to try to guess what you're drawing. It is a great brain break that I use when I'm presenting all the time. It's for students or adults. Adults have plenty of fun with this. And so basically, it is a good way to introduce that by you continuing to do something over and over again, you're helping Google learn. You're helping Google learn that, sweaters all look different, or cars are all different shapes, or dogs are different shapes. And so you're training a computer-based program to be able to recognize more human intelligence. And so that's a really good, I think, interesting way to talk about how AI learns from us. Also, you can look at this other one called Contexto as a way that you can go back and forth with an AI generative tool. This is very similar to Wordle. There's a word of the day. I'm going to go to the next screen and kind of show you how it works. I put Wordle in here to remind me to tell you that it's like Wordle, because that was super popular for a minute. So with this particular one that I did on this day, it doesn't tell you what my first word was, but for some reason, I do remember, it was when I was preparing for this presentation, it was literally like the day after that big barge crashed into the bridge in Maryland. So the word barge was on my brain. Why? I do not know, but I typed in the word barge, and you can't really see the number because of this picture this right here, but it's pink and it has a very small bar. That means it is a little bit related to the word of the day, but not a whole lot. So from there, I think I went to ship. Okay, well, ship is way on up here, and it's green, and it has 67. It's like it is, the 67th word away from that. And so I kind of began to get a feel that this had to do with the water, maybe a vessel, boat. You can see I typed in all those things. So this is an example of how you can use an AI prompt and how it takes work to be able to figure those things out, that you've got to go back and forth in order to sometimes get a right product. You can see I guessed several words, and by some miracle, I guess my brain was just working good that day, and I ended up getting the word as well, and it took me 19 guesses. I have done this some days and never guessed the word and had to Google it to figure out what it is, because I wasn't even close. But doing this as a class activity for older kids is a really good way to show how that just plugging one thing in AI is not always going to give you the answer that you want or you need, that it takes work and it takes your brain power to be able to manipulate these computer systems to get the end outcome. So we'll talk a little bit more about, how to combat some of those stereotypes in a minute. But again, these are just two little fun things that you can use to kind of get warmed up with AI, how it works, things like that. So let's focus on our implications for our teachers for a few minutes. I love, 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 love this quote from Matt Miller. It says, "Solid teaching can overcome just about anything. Technology is not going to improve poor teaching. If you are a 5-star teacher, you are the whole package. You know your content, you've got classroom management, you make good rapport with the students, and you're a solid teacher, you are confident about your lessons, that is going to overcome most things. If you are if you have a poor teacher in your building as an administrator, or a teacher that could use some improvement or things like that, putting a class set of Chromebooks in there and saying, hey, I need you to write a paper using ChatGPT does not make that teacher a better teacher. Okay. So AI is not going to replace teachers. There are so many things that our teachers are needed for, that just because we are beginning to use technology more in our classrooms, they are not going to be replaced by technology. It still requires a person to do all of those things. Now, can this make it more effective? Can it help them learn things that would not be possible otherwise? Absolutely. Can it be a disturbance? Can it be a distraction? Can it be negative? Absolutely. But all of those things come into the teacher's ability to manage their classroom also. So I really want to drive that point home with you all, that these things doesn't mean that a teacher is not needed. This is a great little feel-good article about all the things that teachers do, like they love on the kids and all of those great things. So I highly recommend reading that. It is on a Padlet of many, many resources that I will share at the end of this presentation. But teachers, if you are listening to this, please take that to heart, that nothing that I say in this presentation is ever going to replace your role in the classroom. However, when we think about a teacher role, there are lots of tasks that you do every day that can be replaced by AI that I would 100% take advantage of. Creating rubrics. I was a earth science teacher in sixth grade. And so every 9 weeks we did a huge project, and I would grade it by a rubric. And so I would have to go to some website maker and make a rubric and think about all those steps and type in all those things. And it was a lot of work. Well, now I can go to one of these tools for AI and it makes a rubric for me based on, if I said we're going to build a volcano project and these are my standards, and it's going to make a rubric. And that would have saved me so much time. So there are lots of things that as a teacher you can take advantage of. Now, I do want to draw attention to the fact that, lesson plans. Some people are like, that's cheating. They're writing their lesson plans. Well, I think we're all a little guilty of searching on Teachers Pay Teachers for, material from time to time. And I don't know if I always cited those Teacher Pay Teacher lesson plans in my lesson plans I turned in. So in my personal opinion, I think that using AI to generate lesson plan ideas, using Teachers Pay Teachers, using the internet as a source in general is being resourceful, as long as it is appropriate for your students. One great thing, and this is on some articles later about ChatGPT, is if you are teaching long division, if you are struggling with how to relate to some, students who may not be quite on your grade level, you can say, hey, help me, word this in third grade language. And ChatGPT can help you come up with the terminology that you need to use in order to be able to break it down. I know that our secondary teachers are content area focused. So if you have, an 8th or 9th grade teacher, they may need to be able to drop down to a 6th and 7th grade level that they may not have as much experience with. So things like that to help them differentiate in that instruction would be a great tool. So with a lot of these things, we need to think about our shift in the way that we used to present information and the way that we used to gather, certification of knowledge from our students. We can't just say, here's a slideshow, I'm going to read from it today, and here's your vocabulary quiz. That's just not going to be enough anymore. Basic recall is not going to suffice because there's just too much out there to combat that. So we need to think about some different strategies. Are we using classroom discussion? We cannot mimic the thoughts of the students, and we cannot get an AI tool or a computer to have a real-time discussion that could take place in the classroom. That whenever we have groups of students working together, that they bounce ideas off each other and come up with a brand new product or a brand new concept. That's not going to be something that the computer can do on its own. And using other types of assignments instead of just your standard worksheet, things like that we've always done. Using videos, infographics, storyboards, creating things that could not be able to be made otherwise, utilizing technology to do that. Matt Miller also gives a lot of other strategies too to use in the classroom if you are interested in taking a look at some of those. So this is also a graphic from Ditch That Textbook, which Matt Miller is the founder of that company. And we're going to take a look at some of those AI tools later. And then there is a list of ways to specifically use Chat GPT in the classroom. That is actually not one of the tools I'm going to demo today, just because there are some that are a little bit less popular that I think are really good little nuggets of information that I want to make sure we have time to look at. So we've talked about teachers. Now let's think about how this is going to affect our students. Our students that are in our classrooms right now are not growing up in the same world that we grew up in. I do remember our first computer lab. I remember taking my floppy disk to the computer lab whenever I was attending middle school. And so I did grow up in that age, but it was not put into my hands in elementary school. I did have to grow and adapt, and I've had to learn a lot of these technologies as an adult, and that is not always easy. But our students are going to need these skills in order to be in the workforce, in order to go to college. My last or my graduate degree that I received last year was completely online. I did all of my work online. Our class meetings were online. And so our students who were going to go to a secondary institution, they're going to have to be able to work well online. If our students are going into the workforce, they're going to have basic technology skills like typing and word processing and researching and how to use different things in order to complete their jobs. So there are so many things that rely on technology that we can't just say we're going to remove it because everybody needs to learn how to write, a 5-paragraph essay. While that is important, it is not the only strategy they're going to need in life. And so one of the things that I did in some of the research is that students who were born after 2010, which are both of my children, by age 8, they will have surpassed the technological ability of their teachers and their parents. Now, most of us probably know like that's true. You can give your phone to a kid and they can get into all kinds of stuff. But 2, they can't always apply all of their knowledge. So there's a difference being able to find things and do things on a phone versus like take knowledge and create something using technology. So I really want you to kind of think about those things too, that we're using technology as a resource to create something that would not be otherwise possible, not just using it to bypass work. Now, if there is no other reason to use AI other than this, I'm totally fine with this. But this is one of the top reasons to use AI, is making it easier for students who need accommodations to be able to complete work. AI has so many tools and so many things that enhance accessibility in programs for students who have academic struggles to be able to complete work, that it really, really, truly can change their education pathway. And so this presentation that's linked in here gives an example of tons of things and resources that can be used to help make learning more accessible for students. So let's kind of talk about the plan. Like, all right, we know why it's important. Katie has been rambling about how we're going to change the world and all this stuff. So here's what we're actually going to do. Okay. So we're going to have to rethink the way, again, that we are giving information to our kids and rethinking the way that we are receiving that they have learned this content, that they have gained knowledge. AI can be considered cheating. Absolutely. It can be considered plagiarism, but there is no difference in using an AI tool versus copying and pasting an article off the internet and turning it in. That's essentially the same thing. So when we talk about academic dishonesty, it all falls under the same category. So, that's one thing that we do have in our corner as educators. But we have to kind of train these students to understand that too. So hopefully for next school year, there will be some digital citizenship content that's going to be pushed out by me, that's also going to help educate our students on how to use our AI tools responsibly as well. And so again, just basic factual recall is not going to quite be enough. We're going to have to ask students to really apply this knowledge, because anybody's going to be able to Google something and come up with a response. But we need them to kind of actually take knowledge and apply it and figure out a more, descriptive way to showcase what they've learned. Okay, so these are some things that we've heard, and in the past year and a half, every tech conference that I have been to has had multiple presentations on AI. And so these are just some things that we've all heard, but we've had people say, well, let's just block all of it. It does everything for the students and it's cheating. Let's just take away all their technology. They only need to write with paper and pencil, and that no one has to think anymore. Well, I'm going to beg to differ on the thinking one because on Contexto, whenever I'm trying to figure out the word of the day, I'm doing a lot of thinking. It is not something I can do before I have caffeine in the morning. So when we think about let's just block it, okay? Well, if you have ever tried to block a certain website from a student in school, you know that the one you block, there are probably five other ones just like it, and they're going to find them. So there's going to be a way around everything with that. If we think about just taking things away, you need to think about on our high school students, are we really still preparing them for the future that they have to live in, for the world that they have to operate in? If we are not giving them any type of digital skills, what's going to happen when they go to college and they have to take an online math lab? Or they go into the workforce and all of their tickets have to be entered in on a device, or they have to use a POS system in the restaurant they're working in, or things like that. They still need those basic skills. And when we think about too that nobody has to think anymore, have conversations about how we use it. Let's train them on how to use those things. Whenever we were in kindergarten, we didn't just slap some paper and pencil down and expect them to be able to write everything. We had to teach them all those things. And so we've got to teach them how to do this too. These are two tools that can be used to help check student work. Now, this is not supposed to be just a gotcha, but this does make people feel better in a essence. So I'm going to model the way that some of these look. But one of the things is in a Google Doc, you can go look at a version history and you can kind of see all the edits that have been made. And one thing that you want to look for both version history and draft back is that if you see a large chunk of text be entered in at one time, that's going to kind of be a little bit of our, hey, do we really think they typed all that fast, or did they take some material from somewhere and they inserted it? And so now we went from a little bit of something to a whole lot of stuff in a very short time span. So in version history, you can see date and timestamps to see. You can also see who worked on it. So maybe that's a good way to monitor. I used to use this to look at group participation, that everyone worked on certain parts of a project. And then in the draft back, it's a really cool extension that's available for download for our teachers where you can actually watch a paper be composed. And so that will be in our next part too. So approved examples and tools, I'm going to talk briefly about them. And then in the next video, I will actually demonstrate them. So I kind of labeled it as beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And it's not really on how hard it is to use. It's kind of for how much effort you have to put into it to get something out of it, is really the way I was kind of rating those. So Canva is a super popular online publishing style tool. And so they actually have something called Magic Studio. So whenever you want to go create a social media post or something like that, you can pick your style and your template, and then it will actually draft up statements for you. You can insert a little bit of information and it will really jazz it up for you. So that's something that I have personally used, is great. CuraPod is another really neat resource. You can find tons of pre-made presentations, but my favorite part about CuraPod is they have little bitty different style activities that are super interactive. They have brain breaks. They have vocabulary games that can be played. And it's very much like a Kahoot style situation where the teacher presents something and all the students join in. So it's interactive for everybody. And there's just tons of content on there that's already made. You can also insert your own material and really jazz it up with different activities and things built into your presentation, kind of like in Nearpod. But both of these things, which we have Canva for education, everybody in Chilton County, but CuraPod is free to use as well. So kind of an intermediate level, again, this is the amount of work you have to put into it. ChatGPT, I have used it to write recommendation letters because those are just really hard for me to write for some reason. So you can ask it for a recommendation letter for a high school student applying for a scholarship, and it will give you way more than you probably even want to put in a letter. If it sounds too formal and you're like, okay, that just does not sound, that is not how I write, that's not how I talk, you can say, make it a little less formal, and it will revamp it and kind of put in a little bit more friendly language for the reader. So ChatGPT really is a good tool to use as kind of we used to sit and have peer-to-peer writing conferences whenever I was teaching. And, I would say, okay, well, how could you make this sound better? Or what word could you put here instead? ChatGPT can do that for students. They could have, how can I make this sentence sound better? Or what word can I use instead of this? So it's almost like they can have a conversation back and forth to help improve their writing. So that would be a good example of how to use ChatGPT. Scribe is, again, that was my favorite tool. That's going to kind of be more of an administrative thing, but all I can think about too is expository writing, how you write the process of steps or whatever. So you could use Scribe to build out your like outline of your paper, and then you could go back and draft it into a narrative form. Would be super good for that. And then finally, more advanced only because there is so much that can be done with them. I used to have Magic School AI in this presentation. Magic School AI has gone to paid versions. There is a teeny tiny free version that you can do for some things, but School AI right now is still completely free. It's very comparable. You can make rubrics. They even have an IEP generator, and I have generated one. I let Miss Coppage, our director of special education, look at it, and she said it's not bad, for me to have written it, who has very little special education background, that it was a pretty good IEP. So not saying that that should replace all of your things, but whenever special education teachers, whenever you're having to write 35, maybe it can give you some fresh ideas. And Question Well is another super, super great resource to help save time. Whenever I was an earth science teacher, everything was, I always wanted to make sure I was giving up-to-date information. So I made my own slideshows. I didn't use textbook slideshows or the same resources, even year to year. I would kind of redo them and make sure that they were up to date. And so I would build my own test from those. With Question Well, you can take a set of text or a slideshow or things like that and insert it into Question Well, and it will build a test and questions for you. That is a game changer, in my opinion, because as someone who used to go through her slides and have to think of questions and different style questions and things like that, there is a paid version for that one if you wanted more of the features, but the basic part of it is free. Super, super good resource right there. This is a Padlet full of resources. It has all of those tools, examples of how to use those tools on there. And it also has, I keep it updated about once a month with some current research and articles and things like that that I find interesting that I stick on there. And then if you want to dive more into AI, I have some of the presentations from conferences that I've attended from AETC, which is the Alabama Educators Technology Conference. This one has over 50 different AI tools in it. ChatGPT exclusively from Holly Clark at the ISTE conference last year from Philadelphia. And then this one is from our local ATM, Angie Clark, and things that she presented. And it has tons of really good research-based information. And then also some books that I have read, AI for Educators, which again, this presentation was based around, and the AI Infused Classroom by Holly Clark. Both great recommendations on my part. And I thank you for tuning in today. Hop over to my next video to see some of these things demonstrated.